All right, ladies and gentlemen, gonna make a video here. So, out here in Blasted Lands, leveling my weapon skill with our brother Horde, Orc Warrior over here, Worry. Basic, oh damn, it fell off. I don't know why it fell off, but it did. Let me get Judgmental Light back on here. Him and me can both benefit from Judgmental Light on this. As you can see, it'll heal him when he hits this mob. Come on, heal him. Don't make me a liar. There it is. So he gets Judgmental Light effects as well while we're fighting this damn thing. But while I'm doing this, we're just going to make a video here about Mage Burst. So I finally got some sleep. What's been going on with me is we moved into the new apartment. So the moving is done, but I'm not used to the new bed. The new bed's a fair bit harder than the old bed. And so I've just been really struggling to sleep. That's why I ended up being awake at like 4 a.m. and able to duel Zaryu last time. But we got the data we needed from Zaryu. Oh, other fun facts. I managed to fix the OBS issue with the video clipping on the sides by literally taking the screen, dragging it over, and then putting it back in place. And it's like, oh, I'm fixed now. Oh, yeah, God. Yeah, but we can ignore this for a fair bit of time. But anyways, I finally got some decent sleep. So I'm not loopy anymore. And I got up off my butt and I started thinking about and analyzing Mage Burst, like exactly what Zaryu was doing to me that's causing me to have like a non-existent win chance, even as a paladin. So to start off with, paladin is one of the tankiest classes in the entire game that you could make in Season of Discovery. So if a paladin can't survive a Mage Burst, it's a bit of a problem. I'll TLDR it here really fast. The Mage Burst combo is a problem and probably needs to be nerfed. And not probably, it 100% needs to be nerfed. There's other options, but highly suggested. So if I analyze other classes' bursts, let me get my tooltip here. If I analyze other classes' bursts, they're around about 6k HP damage to target. This is pretty consistent. So, but more importantly, they're in line with classic WoW philosophy as far as the burst meta is concerned. Damn it, I guess I can't TLDR it. I'm just going to go off and do a tangent. The TLDR is the Shaman, Hunter, and Boomy bursts are all roughly 6k. The Mage Burst is on the low end, getting over 8k damage. So it's 7,800 damage on the low end. And then if you just throw a grenade into the mix or a Goblin Sapper Charge, it'll easily go over 8k HP damage to the enemy. All this stuff over here is how much HP and durability I have with what gear. So I have like, 5,400 HP base and then like a 533 shield, Sacred Shield HP, which will proc twice during this Mage Burst. That gives me a total of 6,260 HP. If I use Hand of Reckoning, it goes up to 6,665, which is what I had when I was dueling Zaryu. If I had Kings, which my Holy Shock Eye doesn't have, it would go up to that. If I had both Kings and Hand of Reckoning, it would be over 7k HP. If I was using 200 HP Librams instead of Fire Resist Librams, and I had both of these, it would go up to 7,350 HP. And of course, if I had another plus 100 healing, which is what I would get from missing the gear, it goes up to 7,432 HP. You'll notice that I'm still not getting anywhere near durable enough to survive an 8k burst from a mage on the low end. But oh ho ho, it gets worse. And the reason why it gets worse is because you're basically stunned and or silenced and or slowed during the duration of this. So mages right now are basically doing what rogues do if rogues are doing way too much damage for people to survive, right? A rogue opens up on you, they do tons of damage, and you can't even push a button during the entire event. Literally, unless you have PvP trinket, you're about to die. Okay, that's basically what's worse is that the burst is just like a bad rogue burst. It's extremely consistent. In classic World of Warcraft, you can in a burst meta specifically, you can have high bursts. Let's get rid of this. Let's make sure I'm not dead. Okay, oh, the Lord Warrior took off, so now I'm eating all the damage. That's good to know. So I guess that means I leave as well. Jump. Whatever. Resummon minion. Okay, don't. Listen, stop that. Just you can click the other librams and it'll stop the summon pet, which is really nice. All right, go on, go away. Deal with this really quick. All right, cool. Let's just log out here really fast so we can go make the damn video. Boom. Okay, cool. Back to the video. What the hell was I talking about? Right, so in a burst meta in classic World of Warcraft, and this is an important concept, and I have to make a video on burst or on PvP metas in general. It's a video I've been wanting to make for a long time, but I just, I've been busy raiding, moving, and not getting sleep to make the damn video. Is my microphone closer to my face, so it's not off in Narnia. In a PvP bursty meta, or in burst meta in general, you can have high damage bursts and you can have consistent damage bursts, but you cannot have high damage, consistent damage bursts, okay? Cannot do that. So basically what a high damage burst would be is it's a burst where you need to do something, you need to use major cooldowns or you're dead. Right? Major cooldowns, such as like PvP Trinket would be a major cooldown that not everybody would have. Major cooldowns like Healing Potion or Whipperroot Tuber, which are tools not everyone's going to have available, but theoretically people could have available to them. Or like Bubble, for example, or Ice Block, for example, right? So you can have high damage bursts that force out major defensive cooldowns from your enemies. Or you can have consistent damage bursts, but you cannot have high damage, consistent damage bursts. Cannot exist in the game. Okay, that's not even technically true. You can't have repeated high damage, consistent bursts in the game. The repeat is important, but it's also not part of the equation. Oh fuck! I don't know. My thoughts are all over the place again. Low on sleep. But what I'm trying to explain is this. So this Mage Burst here is extraordinarily consistent. All right. This has like an 80% chance of happening, and it's an 80% chance that this happens while at the same time the enemy player can take no defensive action really whatsoever except PvP Trinket and Healing Potions. That's the only defensive actions people can really take outside of like Bubble or Ice Block or something like that, like an actual class-based major defensive cooldown. And it's consistently doing significantly more damage than people can gear to possibly defeat. Outside of stacking Frost Resist, which nobody... If you're having to stack Frost Resist to survive a burst from an enemy spellcaster, something's very wrong in your game design in general. I don't even think... You might even die even without the Frost Resist. But what's worse is the Mage can do this, again, 30 seconds later. Because all of the abilities here on a 30-second cooldown, except for the Ball of Death, which is required for the Mage Burst. I'll describe the Mage Burst in a bit. But the Ball of Death is on a 1-minute cooldown. The Ice Cube is on a 30-second cooldown that stuns you for 5 seconds. And the Counterspell is on a 30-second cooldown that silences you for 5 seconds. However, you can just Cold Snap and refresh the cooldown of your Ice Ball and literally do this exact same burst all over again 30 seconds later. So it's like, oh, I survived with PvP Trinket the first time, or I survived with like Whipperroot Tuber and Healing Potion the first time. Okay, and the Mage is like, it's like 30 seconds later, and the Mage is doing it all over again to you. And then if for somehow, some way you survive that, the Mage can do this burst all over again like a minute later. Like, what the fuck? On top of the fact that they can just cheap you for an entire minute, right? I mean, Jesus Christ. This is really bad, is what I'm saying, okay? You don't have this anywhere near the same problems with any of the Shaman Burst, Hunter Burst, or Boomy Burst. The only thing that would remotely look similar to what these mages are able to do is if Rogue was able to do 8,000 HP worth of damage within like the 10 seconds of stun or the 12 seconds of stun that they're doing to a target, right? Because this is 8,000 damage, and oh, by the way, you can't do a fucking thing unless you have PvP trinket. Or the only counters to this are Whipperoo Tuber Healing Potion. That might cause you to survive. PvP Trinket. That might cause you to survive. The other one is grenading and or goblin mortaring the mage while you're in the counter spell. All these things are doable, well, except for the PvP Trinket, are doable while you're in the counter spell. That's the only real way to possibly survive the burst. And the mage has a toolkit that is just going to let them do it over and over and over again until you fucking die. So you have everything you don't want to see in a burst meta all in one place. You have way too much damage, way too consistently with no counterplay options available to the player pretty much whatsoever. Let's examine Shaman Burst, Hunter Burst, and Boomy Burst by comparison. As you can see, they do a more modest amount of damage at about 6k. 6k damage burst are reasonably easy to survive. So, for example, one defensive PvP trinket or one defensive trinket would pretty much allow you to survive. Most classes can very easily get 5,400 HP, like, no problem. On top of the fact they might have some HOTS rolling. That's another terrible thing about the Mage Burst, unlike any other burst in the game, is that they can sheep you for a million years and wait for HOTS and shields and stuff to fall off before bursting on you, which is something that they can't do against Sacred Shield specifically. But the 6k bursts are close enough to the 5,400 mana bar, and on top of the fact that 2 out of 3 of these, a lot of their damage is fire damage, like 2k fire damage, fire trap crit, 2.5k lava burst crit, that their damage will actually fall below 6k and becomes manageable if you have a fire resist. On top of that, these bursts are not silencing you or stunning you or CCing you in any way, real shape or form for like 10 seconds. There might be a 3-second grenade stun involved here. There might be a starfall stun involved here, and like the Boomy Burst. But the enemy gets to take all manner of actions, including instant cast heals, instant cast hotting themselves, instant cast shields, all that good stuff, right? So there's plenty of counterplay to be found in these other 3 bursting classes. What's even more notable is the consistency factor. This Shaman Burst here is reasonably consistent, especially if the target cannot cleanse the Flame Shock off of them, right? The Lava Burst is going to crit. The Chain Lightning is probably going to crit. The Earth Shock is going to crit. So this burst here is extremely consistent, but you can survive it fairly easily via the methods that we talked about. Whatever's going to cause you to survive, the Mage Burst will also cause you to survive a Shaman Burst, on top of the fact that you're not CC'd for like a million years. So there's plenty of counterplay involved. But the Shaman's follow-up bursts are significantly weaker from an RNG perspective, right? Because, yeah, they can do one good consistent burst with their nature swiftness or their elemental mastery rune, not rune, talent, whatever, yeah. Spell, there we go, that's probably the correct term. But past that, all subsequent bursts are going to be RNG based, right? So they'd have to roll pretty good on RNG to do 6k damage burst. Likely they're going to be like doing a 5k damage burst. And this is very important for the burst meta. It's very important for a burst meta of PvP that the enemy bursters mathematically require multiple bursts to really get the job done in PvP. And the reason for that is because if they do not require multiple bursts to get the job done in a burst meta, there's no counterplay or no back and forth or no skill expression on the part of the enemy. When you hear terminology like no skill expression, no counterplay, these words basically are all saying the same thing, and they're saying that I died and there was nothing I could do, right? They're not even saying that. They're saying I died and there was no opportunity for me to do anything. So, for example, if you play a class that just doesn't do enough damage, and because you don't do enough damage, you can't kill anything, you have no counterplay, if you want to think of it that way. If you get bursted out of existence and you were stunned the entire time, you have no counterplay whatsoever. So in a burst meta, it's very important that statistically, in order for a burst class to kill somebody, they have to put burst after burst after burst into the target, giving the target plenty of time to do their own thing, right? Or to look at their own RNG, to counterplay, to have a back and forth, right? Otherwise, you're playing tic-tac-toe. The WoW equivalent of tic-tac-toe, basically. I'm slightly rambling here. Again, I'm fucking tired. And all three of these burst classes allow for counterplay, right? The Shaman, he'll burst on you, but the entire time you can do stuff to counterplay, and his burst isn't scary enough that he's going to consistently delete you out of existence, which means he's going to have to put burst after burst after burst into a target before finally the target will run out, before finally RNG will really start going his way, or the enemy will run out of CDs and die, right? So that's good. That's a good burst. Hunter Burst is a bit more scary because it's a bit more potentially concentrated. Because the Hunter Burst is in like 3 instant cast spells, which can all hit the target in under about 3 seconds, right? And subsequently, they can do all of that within the confines of a grenade stun. So a Hunter can, like, your grenade stun you, or pet stun you, and then Chimera Shot, Trap Launcher, Chimera Shot. And you have some time to counterplay because you will come out of the stun before you actually die to all of that nonsense. So you can do some kind of instant cast heal spell. You can drink a major healing potion. You have at least a nanosecond of counterplay there, or you have about 0.5 seconds of counterplay to the Hunter Burst. But more importantly, the Hunter Burst has a lot of RNG behind it, right? So even if they had like a 40% critical strike chance on all 3 of these abilities in rapid succession, they would still need like a 1 in 4. That's a 1 in 4 burst that's actually going to do enough damage to actually kill somebody. Which means, once again, a Hunter has to roll the dice on burst after burst after burst until they'll finally get the correct dice rolls to potentially start forcing out major CDs from their enemy. So again, this is good game design in a burst meta because it gives the enemy plenty of time to look at the RNG, plenty of time for counterplay, their counterplay options, yada, yada, yada. If the Hunter decides to pull the... Hunters do have the ability to pull the trigger on a CC chain that provides no counterplay whatsoever, in the sense that they could grenade stun you for 3 seconds and then open up on you and then have their pet stun you in the chain as well, so that you're stunned long enough that they can do double Chimera Shot and Explosive Trap all without you being able, while you're stunned, so you can take no action whatsoever. But once again, that only has like a 25% success rate. They would need all 3 of these things to crit. If the enemy has a large amount of fire resist, there's an extremely good chance they resist the grenade. And there's also an extremely good chance that the fire damage just doesn't do the fire trap just does not do enough damage, whether it crits or not, to kill the target. So they're taking a risk, if that makes any sense. They're rolling the dice on maybe like a 30% win rate or something like that, and they're going to suffer if it doesn't work. So there's still counterplay involved here. Also, the enemy might have their HOTS rolling while this is happening. It's not like Mage Burst where they can sheep you and wait for bubble shields and HOTS and stuff to wear off of you. They basically have to throw the grenade, and then they throw the grenade, they look for the stun. If they get the stun, they can just go all in on the stun. But if they don't get the stun, they're like, okay, dick in hand. It's still decent. There's still some counterplay to Hunter here. It's not like Mage. It's not like Rogue. Boomy. Let's talk about Boomy. So a Boomies have really scary bursts, but they also have to put like burst after burst after burst into their target because they need two things to happen. They need, I call it Starfall because I don't really know what the rune is, but it's their instant cast star that comes down and it hits you and it can possibly stun you for 3 seconds. And it gives them like an 80% damage buff to like their next a hard cast Star Surge. What the Shaman, what the Boomy really needs to happen is they need this Starfall ability to stun the target. Because it'll stun the target for 3 seconds, and that's just enough time for them to get out a Star Surge on the target. And then behind that Star Surge will be like a Moonfire. Will be like Moonfire or Starfire, my bad, Sunfire spam, which is why I have like 1200 chip damage here. Usually they open on you by dotting you up, and then they do the Starfall thing until it stuns. And then they do a Star Surge, and they hope the Star Surge crits. And when the Star Surge crits, it's backed up by like some Moonfire spam, and the totality of that burst that has about 1200 or more chip damage. But they need two things to happen. They need this to stun the target, and they need this to crit. And because they both need the stun and the crit, it causes them to need to spend a considerable amount of time rolling the dice on burst after burst after burst on the target. Basically, every Starfall that doesn't crit causes them to wait another 6 seconds. My bad, doesn't stun. That causes them to wait another 6 seconds until it does stun, if that makes any sense. And even when they finally get like the 15% stun chance or whatever the hell it is on this damn thing, there's still only a 33% chance that the Star Surge actually crits. If they get the stun and the Star Surge doesn't crit, they're not going to get up to anywhere near enough damage to kill a target. So you get the idea, right? So the thing you do not want to see in Classic World in a burst meta is a very consistent burst that does enough damage to kill a target consistently in the burst that is repeatable, so you can spam it over and over again. You can do the burst over and over and over again. While at the same time the enemy can't really, they're stunned or silenced or hard CC'd in some kind of a way. These three very powerful, very notable burst classes down here have major weak. They're not doing all three of those. Are their bursts spammable? Yes. Are their bursts consistent? No. Do their bursts do enough damage to annihilate a target? And the answer to that is it's like not consistently. And even then, people can gear in such a manner that they can kind of survive it, right? Even if RNG goes their way. This is not true with Mage. All right, so I said I would talk about what the Mage Burst actually is later. Let's talk about it right now. Let me pause the video really fast so we can actually go look at the runes. All right, cool, we're back. All right, so I'll do a quick TLDR on what their burst actually is, and then we'll go look at the runes specifically so we can look at opportunity cost, basically. So the first thing they do is they turn you into a damn sheep. And they turn you into a sheep so they can wait for any kind of HOTS or any kind of CC or bubble shields or anything that's going to affect their burst to go away. They also need you to be in a sheep because they have to land their Ice Ball of Death. Okay, the Ice Ball of Death moves very, very slowly. And if their target is allowed to run around, it becomes incredibly easy to dodge, right? But they need to land it because once they land the Ice Ball of Death, it immediately lets them Ice Cube the target with a 100% probability. The moment that the first target that the Ball of Death damages basically activates Fingers of Frost, basically, or roots the target in place, which means the target can suddenly be stunned for 5 seconds. So the sheer act of it damaging you and causing you to come out of sheep means that they get to stun you for 5 seconds. Cool. So you're stunned for 5 seconds, and rather than it having a normal GCD of 1.5 seconds, the stun will have a GCD of 1.25 seconds. Why is this? It's because of their some moron over at Blizzard decided to give them Icy Veins, which gives them spell haste. In Classic WoW, the only item that gives, there's only 2 items that I know of that give spell haste in Classic World of Warcraft. They are Scrolls of Blinding Light, which is a Paladin-only trinket from BWL, and the Mind Tap Talisman trinket, which is a Mage-only trinket from BWL. The reason why it's fine to have haste on burst trinkets is because all burst trinkets in Classic World of Warcraft share a fucking cooldown with all other burst trinkets in Classic World of Warcraft. So, for example, a mage can Mind Tap Talisman, but they can't Mind Tap Talisman and use a 200 spell power burst trinket. That would be absolutely insane. They can't Mind Tap Talisman and Goblin Mortar somebody. That would be insane. Same thing with like Scrolls of Blinding Light kind of a deal. But once you give them Icy Veins, they can Icy Veins and do all kinds of other burst trinket shenanigans, which will greatly increase their burst. But Icy Veins is critical here because it's reducing both the cast times on the Frost Fire Bolts and it's reducing GCD timers. So in this 5-second stun, our mage has the capability of stunning the target for 5 seconds, then goes 1.5 GCDs, and then rather than 2-second spell casts on their Frost Fire Bolts, they have 1.66 seconds of spell cast on their Frost Fire Bolts. This means that the total cast time of their 2 Frost Fire Bolts is and their Ice Cube instant cast is 4.6 seconds, which they can do all of that inside of a 5-second CD. Once the enemy comes out of the 5-second stun, they can then silence them for 5 seconds, which only has a 1.25 second GCD now, and they could do the entire fucking process all over again. Also, because you're stuck in a goddamn Ice Cube, for these first 2 Frost Fire Bolts, they're going to have upwards of an 80% critical strike chance on the first 2 Frost Fire Bolts. And then for the remaining Frost Fire Bolts, critical strike chance likely drops to being somewhere in the vicinity of, let me think, it's probably closer to like a 50% critical strike chance for both of these Frost Fire Bolts. That's why this is the low end damage of this fucking burst. Is 7,800 damage, HP damage. This is factoring in the minus 30% spell damage reduction for PvP and all that crap. It's doing, and you throw a grenade or a Goblin Mortar into the mix here, or a PvP burst trinket, and just fuck, right? You're well and truly over 8,000 damage on the low end. On the low end, with extreme consistency while the enemy is stunned and or silenced the entire time. And they can't have hot swirling because they were sheeped. Like that's the TLDR on what this burst is. Now let's go look at the actual runes involved in the burst. Getting a drink of water here. Let's go look at the actual runes involved in the burst and talk about possible solutions that'll bring it significantly more in line with Classic World of Warcraft. It's perfectly fine for Shaman to do, for Mage to do this much damage in a burst. It's fine if they have the ability to do this much damage in a burst. What's not fine is the fact that you're silenced and or stunned the entire duration, or the fact that it's extraordinarily consistent. Like, this is the mathematical low-end damage of the burst. None of these guys are mathematically consistent in their burst, except literally, this is the Shaman burst, except they have to use their elemental mastery in order to get this thing consistent. And on top of that, it's nowhere near getting, and also it's spammable. There's so many. This is like everything that you could possibly do wrong in a burst on a class all in one. And it's fascinating to watch. These 3 classes don't have burst issues, but then we're back to like this class having a burst issue. This is literally like watching rogues do way too much damage. They're like, yeah, I stun and CCU for like 15 fucking seconds, and I do enough damage to kill any class in the game. I'm not broken. Yeah, sure. Whatever you say. Let's look at the runes. All right, first thing we got to find is the Frost Ball of Death. All right, Frozen Orb launches a ball of blah, blah, blah. This thing is on a 1 minute cooldown, but you can, what's it called? Frost Tap? No. Icy no. Cold Snap. Thank fucking God. You can Cold Snap this thing to get like basically 2 of them going at the same time if you really wanted to. You don't want to do that. You want to save your Cold Snap for a second Ice Block and a second Frost Orb so you can do this exact same burst 30 seconds later is what I'm trying to say. So ignore the fact that it's on a 1 minute cooldown. It can be on as short as a 5-second cooldown if you really want it to. But the important thing here is that it chills the target, okay? But it also says that it has a 100% chance to trigger Fingers of Frost rune. The first time it damages an enemy, its movement speed will slow, and it has a 100% chance to trigger the Fingers of Frost rune. This is one way you could balance Frost Orb, is if you literally remove this 100% chance to trigger Fingers of Frost rune. Because if you remove the 100% chance to trigger the Fingers of Frost rune, suddenly it becomes inconsistent whether or not the mage can stun you for 5 seconds in a cube of ice. And because it becomes inconsistent, it would break you out. There's a chance that it'll break you out of the sheep, and you could just run the fuck away from the ice ball of death. It's not a very good chance because the thing chills you, and every time you get chilled, there's like a 15% chance to trigger the Fingers of Frost rune, and you got a damn mage, like, casting rank 1 frost bolts into you to also try to turn you into a damn ice cube. So it's not the greatest chance in the world, but at least it goes from 100% chance you're turned into an ice cube before you can do anything to maybe you could actually cast an instant cast spell or run the fuck away from the Frozen Orb before the burst starts getting off. So that's one way to balance it. But anyways, moving on. Now we need to find, okay, so that's a back rune. Let's find Fingers of Frost, because this is kind of critical. Gives your chill effects a 15% chance to trigger Fingers of Frost effect, which treats your next 2 spell casts as if the target were frozen. Okay, cool. Basically, that's what's allowing you to turn motherfuckers into ice cubes and stun them for 5 seconds. So you either need to Frost Nova them in place, and you could stun them for 5 seconds, or you need to wait for Fingers of Frost to trigger, and that allows you to stun them for 5 seconds. The other thing that happens with frozen targets with Frost Mages is that they end up having like a plus 50% chance to crit them or some shit like that. Where is Shatter? Okay, cool. Increase the critical strike chance of all your spells against frozen targets by 50%. That means if you're... so when Fingers of Frost triggers, your next 2 spell casts have a plus 50% chance to critical strike. On top of that, they stack up Winter's Chill on you, which gives them another 10% chance to critical strike. So very quickly, mages have like a plus 60% chance to crit with their frost spells. So very quickly, you can see we're getting up into ranges and territories of 100% chance to crit. That's why, and on top of that, they get 100% damage bonus on their frost spells when they crit. That's why this burst is insanely consistent. Right? There's no real RNG on this 8,000 damage burst because they have like 100% critical strike chance. That's basically like, it's like 80, 90% critical strike chance at current level, and it'll only get worse from then on. And we don't really want to watch that. Thank you very much. Oh, and what's causing them to silence is when they go deep enough into the arcane tree to get improved counterspell. Gives counterspell a 100% chance to silence the target for 4 seconds. Interesting. I always thought it was 5 seconds. Maybe it is 5 seconds if I put 2 talent points in here. Let's find out, shall we? 4 seconds. Okay. Does that change anything? Huh. Not really. Okay. It might change what you can do to change the burst, but it doesn't actually change the nature of the burst. And we'll talk about it in a second. The reason for this is I think counterspell's not on the GCD. I'm not 100% certain if counterspell triggers a GCD or not. But let's keep it moving. Only 4 seconds. Interesting. Okay. Good to know. Right. So the fingers of Frost All right, so let's talk about what Icy Veins is doing. Icy Veins is causing the mage, is increasing mage spellcasting by 20% haste, which is reducing the GCDs and the cast times down so that mages can now do 2 Frost Fire Bolts inside of a 5-second stun, and as we're going to see in a second, inside of even a 4-second silence. The reason why they can do that, even inside of a 4-second silence, is because of, is it Brain Freeze? Yeah, it's Brain Freeze. Okay. Then they take the Brain Freeze rune. I should start putting these runes on. Okay, Frozen Orb, Fingers of Frost, no Displacement, no Molten Armor, no Time Rewind. You would take Ice Lance, but we'll talk about that later. Frostfire Bolt's definitely taken. Ice Lance, I do believe, is taken. Icy Veins is taken. The last one is Brain Freeze, and I don't think there's anything else going on with anything. Deep Freeze, right? Then you got to take Deep Freeze. Okay. Right. And so this is the bill. Waste. There's nothing here for you in the waste. So you probably just take Displacement or Time Rewind. Okay, cool. All right, let's talk. So you can see there's no opportunity cost here whatsoever, which sucks. Let's talk about Brain Freeze. Your frost damage spells with a chilling effect, which is your Ball of Death, which is pulsating every 1 second on the target. And it's going to be all your Frost Fire Bolts and all your instant cast rank 1 Frost Bolts. I don't think it's your Ice Lance. Ice Lance, I don't think causes chill effects. Yeah, causes triple damage against frozen targets, so that would also be your Fingers of Frost, Dinguses, a spell you can use in the move. Ice Lance isn't a major part of this component, but she's definitely there. It's more of a chase part of the component. Brain Freeze has a 20% chance every time you're hit with a chilling effect spell to cause Frost Fire Bolt, that's the thing specifically here, to be an instant cast and cost no mana. That is why when you counterspell them for 4 seconds, you can probably... there's 2 possibilities here, right? Either Counterspell does not actually have a GCD, or Counterspell has a 1-second GCD, or there's an extraordinarily high probability at this point in the fight that you have procced one of these 2 Frost Fire Bolts, that if you had to hard cast them, you could not get them out in 4 seconds, right? Because if Counterspell has a 1.5-second GCD, this whole sequence here is going to cost you 4.6 seconds of cast time, which means the enemy is going to come out of the silence and have 0.6 seconds of time to do something. But if at any point in time during that 4-second silence, one of these gets instant cast, suddenly it makes their cast time go from 1.6 second cast time to 2.5 second instant cast GCD. Yeah, kind of silly if you stop and think about it. But that can happen at any point for just about anything. And there's an extremely high probability of it happening, because the Ice Ball of Death is sitting on you during this entire 9-second event. And since it started ahead of time with the sheep, it's actually going to hit you 10 times before you can do anything. So it'll give them 10 proc chances of not only Fingers of Frost to activate, but for any of these Frost Fire Bolts to become instant cast spells. That's a 200% proc chance from the Ball of Death alone. On top of that, every Frost Fire Bolt that hits the target has an additional 20% chance to make the Frost Fire Bolt that comes after it an instant cast spell. Hopefully you can see where we're going with this. So there's almost a 100% guaranteed chance that one of these Frost Fire Bolts will come out as an instant cast spell. And oh, by the way, they probably also have like a 90% critical strike chance. This is why I'm looking at the low end of this burst, and I'm realizing that mathematically, consistently, this thing is doing over 8,000 HP damage to a target, right? Absolutely disgusting. Does not belong in Season of Discovery. Absolutely needs to be fucking nerfed. But when we talk about nerfs, you want to be careful what you nerf and where you nerf. So possible nerfs are You move Icy Veins somewhere, so that's opportunity costed against something here. Like if you opportunity cost Icy Veins against Fingers of Frost, that would be fine. You opportunity cost it against Frozen Orb, that would be fine. You opportunity cost it against one of these, it would be fine. That might actually be kind of interesting because you'd be slinging classic WoW spells at that point with Icy Veins available. Or you could put it in the Brain Freeze. You could move Icy Veins someplace else. That's one of the better options because suddenly the Mage Burst still can do tons of damage, but it becomes inconsistent, which is what you want in Classic World of Warcraft. You don't want a high damage burst that can be done over and over again, that no one can survive, that can be done over and over again with high RNG. So if this thing had like a 30% chance every time the mage does it to kill the target, that would be fine for Classic World of Warcraft. If it had a 25% chance to kill the target every time the mage does it, that would be fine for World of Warcraft. But when it has an 80% chance or a 90% chance to kill the target every time the mage does it, and the mage can do it every 30 seconds, that does not belong in the game. And what's really causing this to be consistent in its burst is Icy Veins. If we took away Icy Veins, suddenly these become 1.5 second GCDs and these become 2-second casts. And the only possible way that the mage can get out a high enough burst at that point to actually be lethal is if they get good RNG procs on the instant cast spells, right? They become, right now, it's extremely consistent because they can rely on hard casting every single one of these Frost Firebolts, which is what I'm looking at right now. The low end burst is the mage has no instant cast procs whatsoever that matter to the burst, and so he's forced to hard cast out every single one of his Frost Firebolts that he can get out on the target. But he's still doing 8,000 fucking damage consistently because of Icy Veins specifically. You remove Icy Veins and he becomes extremely reliant on Brain Freeze procs to do enough damage in his burst, which means suddenly he'll have to do multiple bursts on the target, which allows counterplay from the other side and brings it more in line with Classic World of Warcraft. So literally deleting Icy Veins out of existence or making it opportunity costed against Brain Freeze would fix the problem. Other options, of course, that we talked about are removing the 100% proc chance from Frozen Orb. But even then, it might be a little bit too powerful, so you might have to lower Finger of Frost proc chance down to like a 10% proc chance, believe it or not. There's one last option I'm trying to remember, other than just lowering Mage... Oh, yeah, okay, so I'm remembering the last one. So the last nerfing option is with Deep Freeze. And what you could do with Deep Freeze is have Deep Freeze have its stun share DR with silence effects. If that makes any sense. I'm trying to think. Would it hurt you in like Battleground PvP? It's already got a thing in Battleground PvP where if the thing is immune to being stunned, it does damage instead. So I guess no, it wouldn't be a problem in Battleground PvP. But if the only nerf we did to this entire build was what I'm trying to think here, was that it shared DR with silence effects, Deep Freeze. This would nerf the burst more in line to being Classic World of Warcraft, because suddenly they wouldn't have 4 seconds of silence to work with. They would only have like 2 seconds of silence to work with. And at that point, I think the math, I could do the math really fast, but I think that the math of the burst makes it inconsistent enough in the damage that the target could survive reasonably well. And so burst after burst would be required, which is where you're supposed to be at in Classic WoW meta, right? Nobody likes seeing rogues in Classic WoW that'll stun you for 10 seconds and they do 8,000 HP worth of damage, because that's literally telling every class in the game, have PvP Trinket or die. And even if you have PvP Trinket, they're probably just going to vanish and come back and do it again and you die anyways, which isn't good. This, as it stands, this fucking mage is basically doing the exact same thing. He's doing what rogues do that everybody agrees we don't want to see rogues doing. Let me do the math here really fast. All right, so if I add a 2-second counter spell, silence, it basically gives my ball of death like 2 seconds. What is that? Yeah, okay, so I guess that, yeah, if Counterspell doesn't have a GCD, I can literally go test that. What am I doing? Battleground. I need BattleNet. Let me go test if Counterspell has a GCD, because suddenly it really matters. If Counterspell doesn't have a GCD, he can still get out of Frost Firebolt, and then he's really kind of praying that he gets another instant cast Frost Firebolt, or that this Frost Firebolt crits. Shut up! If this Frost Firebolt crits, he'll end up doing like, 1, 2, 3, 4. He'll do over 6k damage, close to like 7k damage. Oh, I forgot there's like a grenade stun that you can also do here. Hey, quiet! Dogs are barking at something. Something's going on. Yeah. Right. So they would be reliant on getting an instant cast proc for Frost Firebolt within the silent spell time. They may or may not be able to hard cast out a Frost Firebolt. I think what I want to do here is go Classic WoW and then change servers to Era, because that's where my 60 mage is. Yeah, let's do that really quick. Yeah, we'll just suffer through this together. Yeah, so those are the main solutions. By far the best solution is to change realm. Hey, shut up! Damn, it's not distracting for you guys, it's distracting for me. Let's go to White Mane. Let's get on Rishi Mage. Come on. You can do it. All right, cool. Let's go counterspell something. See if there's GCD. So I need to go outside and like counterspell a wolf. I guess that's what we're doing here. Right, so again, the three options are completely remove the 100% chance to proc Fingers of Frost from the Ball of Death, because that's what's making the burst extraordinarily consistent. That would make the burst go from having like an 80-90% chance to kill the target if the target doesn't have like PvP Trinket and a bunch of other stuff, to closer to, I think, like a 40% chance to kill the target, which is still extraordinarily high of a chance to just delete a target out of existence for a burst that can be done over and over again. So I don't really like that choice. If you nerf... why are you here? Like, what's going on here? Dude, are my channels just on? How about fuck off? How about that? Oh, the doorbell's ringing constantly. Let me pause the video. All right, we're back. Now, what was happening is there's a cleaning lady that my wife hires to come over every week, and she was at the door ringing the doorbell. But I'm here with my headphones on, talking loud as shit in like a room where the doorbell's not. So the dogs are like, Joe! Joe, door, Joe. Where were we? We're out here. Okay. Right. So if you move the Fingers of, no, not Fingers of Frost. If you move Icy Veins so that it's opportunity costed with Brain Freeze specifically, that drops their... Every time they burst, they would have closer to like somewhere between 25 and a 30% chance. I haven't really done the math. per burst to do enough damage to delete the target out of existence, which definitely brings it in line with classic World of Warcraft. You actually want classes in a burst meta to need to do 2 to 3 bursts in order to kill a target. On top of that, you want the win rate of each of those bursts to be relatively low, believe it or not. You want it to be somewhere between 25 and 30% win rate per burst. The reason for this is because in good game design, good human psychology game design, you want every class in the game to at least have a 30% chance to be victorious over just about any other class in the game. Otherwise, people won't want to fight that class anymore or play that class anymore, if that makes sense. So the win rate of a class can be anywhere between 30% and 40% to be kind of viable in a game. If the win rate of any class goes above 70%, that's bad game design. If the loss rate of a class, I guess it's the inverse, goes below that, it's also bad game design. But we're looking at a Mage Burst here that's going to put Mage win rate between 80 and 90% versus a lot of classes, which is just really, really, really bad. It's probably even closer to like 90, now that I'm thinking about it, it's closer to 90% because there's like an 85% chance they kill you in the first burst. And if that doesn't work, they have all the tools they need, including displacement, to survive long enough to just do the fucking burst over again. So they probably have closer to like a 90, 95% win rate. Let me counterspell and we'll find out. Okay, yeah, no GCD. Roger that. That makes sense now. Okay. So counterspell has no GCD. What does this mean? Can they get out 3 Frost Fire Blasts? That's the question. I'm trying to run away from... What am I doing? I'm level 60. What are you doing? Okay. What the... Can I do something? Fuck off? Thank you. I'm like, spells? Claw? Haven't played my mage in quite some time. That's okay. So no GCD on counterspell. Good to know. All right, so how does that change things? No GCD on a counterspell saves them 1.5 seconds of GCD. 1.66666 times 3 equals... Yeah, so if they had a 5-second silence like I thought they did, they would be able to do 3 Frostfire bolts and slam them into the target before the target could take any action. The target might be able to take an action before they die. Because there'd be a Frostfire bolt in the air, they'd be getting hit with a Cone of Cold, and then they could take it out 1 action before the third Frostfire bolt hit them. Instead, it's a 4-second silence on counterspell, and if I divide that, but it has no GCD, and if I divide that by 6.666, you can see that that's going to let them get the 2 Frostfire bolts with plenty of time left over for them to do a Cone of Cold. Or if they don't want to do a Cone of Cold, they could do an Ice Lance or something of that nature. Really depends. But let's do one of these as instant cast. If one of these is instant cast, it's going to be a 1.25 second GCD. And I need to add 1.666 to that. And then I need to ask myself how much time is left over. We have a little over of a second worth of cast time left over. Yeah, so it's consistent no matter how it is, if that makes any sense. So despite the fact that I did not know that a counterspell doesn't have a GCD, and I did not know that it only lasted 4 seconds, everything I've been talking about still checks out mathematically. All right, so that seems to be the situation. Mage Burst needs to be nerfed in some way, shape, or form. Those are the 3 options of nerfing, as near as I can tell, without actually interfering with their raid DPS all that much. Again, it's opportunity cost, Icy Veins with Brain Freeze would 100% do it. What else would do it? Removing Frozen Orbs, 100% chance, would kind of sort of do it. They would still be the scariest burst class in the entire game. So if you wanted them to be the scariest, squishiest burst class in the entire game, you could go that route. And the third and final one that we were attempting to analyze is if you had the ice stun share a DR with silence effects, such as counterspell. Yeah, right. Suddenly they only have 2 seconds to play with after the 5-second stun is up, which is cool. But what could they do in 2 seconds? They could cast 1 Frostfire Bolt in that 2-second time period. They could instant cast 1 Frostfire Bolt in that 2-second time period, and then they could have a Cone of Cold. So literally, what that would end up doing is it removes 1 Frostfire Bolt from the equation, right? And if you remove 1 Frostfire Bolt of the equation, suddenly this burst damage drops to something like still it's 7k burst damage, which is still insanely difficult to try to survive. But at least now we're talking about you can survive it with a heal potion, you can survive it with a whipperoot tuber, you could survive it with PP trinket would cause you to survive it. The other option that's universal for surviving stuff like this is to grenade stun. So this is the burst a mage can do to you before you can do anything. And then when you're silenced, this is the part of the burst that the mage can do to you before you can do anything. But during this silence period of 4 seconds, you can whipperoot tuber, you can heal potion, you can use trinkets. Defensive trinkets, so that would be like Major Recombobulator Ray to heal yourself, Arena Grandmaster Trinket, Goblin Mortar to stun the mage, Tidal Tarn to stun the mage, and or you can throw grenades, right? So there's some counterplay involved in here, which is nice and does exist, but the fact that they can still do 8,000, they can, how do I put this? Like, let's say the mage silences you. Let's say there's no changes whatsoever, right? The mage silences you for 4 seconds, and then you throw a grenade at the mage. Well, guess what? This is Season of Discovery. Fire resist is abundant, and it has been given out like cotton candy, which I really like. Even at 100 fire resist on that mage has a 30% chance to resist that grenade stun. So there's a 70% chance you'll survive, possibly off of the grenade stun, and there's something stupid like a 30% chance that you just die screaming. You cannot rely on the grenade stun to save you. Even if you successfully grenade stun the mage when he comes out of it, he still has a second of time that he can do something. This entire time, the ice ball of death has been pulsating on you, giving something, it's even worse than that now that I'm thinking about it. Because if Brain Freeze has procced, you're still going to eat a 3rd Frostbolt. And that third Frostbolt probably has something stupid, like a 70% critical strike chance. And if it crits, you're still going to get up to the 8,000 damage. Hopefully you see where I'm trying to go with this, right? So let's say, I'll be very specific about what I'm observing, right? Let's say you're in the last second of the 6-second stun, right? What's transpiring? Well, there's going to be a Frost Firebolt that's in the air and on the way to the target. There's going to be multiple ticks of the Ice Ball of Death. So very quickly, you have 3 20% chances to proc and instant cast Frost Firebolt, right? Then you finally come out of the counter spell. The mage may or may not have Frost Firebolted you, right? There's a 40% chance that he's already thrown out an instant cast Frost Firebolt. You can see that coming. If that Frost Firebolt crits, you're probably dead. Then you have to stand and deliver with your grenade. So you have to charge up a grenade throw, which I do believe takes like a second of time. So that's like another 20% chance. That's like another 20% chance that there's an instant cast Frost Firebolt coming your way. You finally grenade stun his ass for 3 seconds. There's a 30% chance he resists the grenade stun or higher if the mage knows what they're doing and they actually have high fire resist on their character. And if you don't get the grenade stun, you're pretty much fucking dead. Then even if you do get the grenade stun, there's still like 3 seconds worth of ball of death ticking on you because you can't get out of it unless you literally have freedom. You're like a paladin specifically. Maybe a warrior could intercept, but they're just going to get physically on top of you at that point, and you'll still be in the ice balls range. So even when the mage comes out of the damn 3-second stun, there's still a 60% chance you get hit with an instant cast Frost Firebolt. Then that spell has like a 70% chance to crit, and if it crits, you're dead, right? So it's like, which is why I specifically like to bring up PvP Trinket and a Whipperoot Tuber and Healing Potion as possible counters that exist in the game for every single class, as opposed to, what is it? Goblin Mortar or Tidal Charm or Grenade, if that makes any sense. The Goblin Mortar and the Tidal Charm are a bit more... What's up? Anyways. What the hell else is there? Oh, right. And yeah, this 7,800 damage here, hopefully you can see at this point, is a low roll for the mage. And it also doesn't factor in like a Goblin Sapper charge. So you just can't survive it. There's almost no class in the game that can survive the burst right now. So this is really, really bad game design, and something needs to be done about it, is the TLDR and all this stuff. All right, well, I'll end the video here in Deus Vult. As you saw in the video, when I was going against Zaryu, he was just consistently deleting me out of existence. My durability was closer to this level right here of having kings, because I did have some frost resistance gear. Yeah, but I wasn't using PvP Trinket or anything like that. I had my Squire up all the time, because I didn't know how the burst actually worked. So he wasn't getting a 20% chance every second. He was getting a 40% chance to instant cast spells every second. But when I looked at the math, it doesn't matter. It only matters if he gets to cast 3 instant cast Frost Fire Bolts over and over again, which he did end up doing at least one time. And he killed me within the 5-second burst because he got to instant cast 3 Frost Fire Bolts in rapid succession. Which checks out. I mean, 1.2 clear. 1.25 times 4 equals 5. Yay! Yeah, he literally killed me inside of the 5-second stun because he did 3 Frost Fire Bolts and all instant cast with Icy Veins active, so they have a 1.25 second GCD time. Every last one of them crit, and I just exploded. Yeah, good stuff. Anything else to say? But there are, of course, in that dueling video, me dueling hunters and boomkins, and sometimes they get good RNG and I die, and a lot of times they don't get good RNG and I kill them, which is perfect classic WoW meta, on top of the fact that they had to do burst after burst after burst into me. If I fought an elemental shaman, you better believe it would be the exact same formula. The elemental shaman would have to do burst after burst after burst. He might get good enough RNG on the burst to overload that he would force out defensive cooldowns, but he still has to do it over and over and over and over and over and over again, which makes the fight nice and dynamic and gives plenty of counterplay. Anyways, on the video here, and Deus Vult.